Well, good morning everybody. Great news. I heard yesterday that some of the Guilters have got together following our lead with our Mammothon. They have organised or are in the process of organising an event called Guiltathon, and I think they should be applauded for taking our lead in getting together to raise money for Steve and Brendan. I know I find that quite strange that they would want to raise money for Steve and Brendan, but they've decided that, you know, we've had our fun, now they're going to have their fun. So excellent. We can only applaud their efforts. And you know, in actual fact, both truthers and so-called guilters, we do actually have a lot in common. Most of the guilters that I know, they do accept the fact that we need to have fair trials. The trial has to be fair. Most of them accept the fact that there needs to be a retrial of Steve and Brendan. Of course, maybe the state, it definitely doesn't want any kind of retrial, but it will be forced into doing so. We await, obviously, Angela Sukovich's decision, but I can't help thinking that, going by the tone of Judge Riley's decision in sending it back to her, that she's now going to realise that the time for messing about has come to an end, and if she realises the kind of corruption that's involved there, will quite gladly wash her hands of having anything to do with such a... I apologise for the phone going. It seems to go on constantly on a Monday morning. Anyway, hopefully it'll go away and not disturb us too much. So as I was saying, yes, I suspect that the state would not want a retrial. I suspect that they would be quite happy for Judge Sukovich to deny again. If she does, it simply reflects very badly on her. As I say, it wouldn't surprise me either way. It wouldn't surprise me if Judge Sukovich decides, as I say, I'm going to wash my hands of this and say, look, I'm having no more to do with this, trying to cover up for you and your mistakes and your deliberate withholding of evidence and giving away of evidence that should have been retained. It still beggars belief that Norm Garn, who is partly responsible for drafting the bill to preserve evidence, was actually in collusion with Fallon and Uyghur in handing the bones back, the possible human bones back. Another thing that we share with guilters is that they too would not want wrongful convictions. You know, we both want to see the right people put behind the bar. We want guilty people put behind bars. We don't want to see them. We want to see guilty people behind bars. We don't want to see innocent people put there. And as I say, most of the guilters I know do accept that they at least need a retrial of Steve. There is too much that has been uncovered. Now, let's go back. A lot of them, they want to believe. I've certainly had this with Thomas Hence. To be honest, I actually get on quite well with Thomas Hence. There was a period when we were chatting daily. And a little bit like Tracy Keogh pointed out, you chat with him, you listen to all the stuff about Brendan because it's all good stuff, and you kind of shut off the stuff about Steve because it's nonsense. But even he has said that he wants to believe that Steve is innocent, but he simply can't see it. He's a bit of a doubting Thomas at the moment. And for him, his big problem is Stephen's blood in the car. Is it possible to plant blood in a car. Absolutely. It's very easy to plant DNA and blood. The really difficult ones to do is to plant fingerprints. They are much more difficult to plant. And in fact, just going back to the original wrongful conviction, you remember how Jean Couchet and Kenneth Peterson, they both came out, even though Steve had been exonerated, with, well, I still think he would have done it. You know, I don't accept that it was Gregory Allen. What on earth are they on about? A pubic hair belonging to Gregory Allen was in the rape kit. What more evidence do they need? Are they suggesting that before Jim Lenk and Andy Colburn came on the scene planting evidence, there was somebody that went and got a pubic hair from Gregory Allen and planted it on Penny Bernstein? Come on, what a ridiculous notion. Particularly Jean Couchet. He's right, yeah, has DNA evidence been planted? Yes, but planting human pubic hairs on somebody else? Come on, that's absolutely ludicrous. Anyway, so one of the big problems is the blood in Steve's car. So let's have a look at the actual testimony of Nick Stalker. He tells us that all he did was an inspection of the car. I must admit, it beggars belief that the first time we see any reenactment of anybody trying to apply that scriggle by the steering wheel is in Making a Murder Series 2. Why either Stalker or the defence didn't organise somebody to do that same experiment? Can we replicate that squiggle? I can only assume that the defence thought, well, this is just so ridiculous. It is so obviously planted that nobody in the jury is ever going to believe that it was Stephen Avery that actually applied that squiggle to his, near the ignition. Actually, during the testimony of Nick Stalker, Norm Garn shows Nick Stalker the photograph of Stephen's hand with the cut on the middle finger, and actually says, could that have been the source of the blood? And on this one occasion, which is actually quite good, it's well worth a read, Dean Strang, naturally, quite rightly, objects, and the objection is sustained, because of course Nick Stalker has no idea when Stephen Avery was actually bleeding. He had no idea when the photograph was taken. The photograph shows the cut healed up. That cut is not bleeding, therefore, based on the time frame of everything, that the objection is sustained. But what's more interesting is when Dean Strang interviews and questions Nick Stalker, who is not really an expert on blood splatter. His expertise is actually with narcotics and handwriting. And I asked Eric Hosey, I wondered why somebody hadn't asked him to look at the for sale sign for the Grand Am, which on the back has got the address for Zander Road, along with apparently Teresa Halbach's mobile number. Clearly another attempt at trying to frame Steve by producing this bonfire up at Zander Road, foul smell, Metz reports it. Well, you all know that the story behind that. Two of Eric Hosey's greatest videos, Zander Road. So one of the things that Dean does tie Nick Stalker down to is the fact that the scriggle, whilst he was saying it is within the realms of possibility that the scriggle was applied by somebody with their fingertip, equally he accepts that it could have been applied by a Q-tip or some other implement with blood on the end and simply swiped over that surface. But what is particularly interesting is when Dean Strang asks him about how much blood, because he's done this thorough inspection, how much blood did he find on the exterior and the interior door handles? Answer, none. On the steering wheel, none. And what was particularly humorous was when he said, and what about on the gear shift? You know, that thing in the middle that you have to press in order to get it out of park. One senses the sarcasm in Dean Strang's questioning of Nick Stelker, certainly on that one. Anyway, getting back to the, there's this idea that the thing that ties Stephen to this crime is his blood in the car. Clearly planted blood. Where it came from, that's an interesting question. Personally, my belief, quite clearly, is that they went around with distilled water, which they carry in their car, in their patrol cars, in order to liquefy dried blood. And we've got dried blood flakes. Suggests to me that in their attempt to get, in their successful attempt in liquefying dried blood, they managed to liquefy some in order to apply the squiggles and the drops, and at the same time didn't realise they were dropping some of the dried flakes that they'd also managed to acquire in their re-liquefying of the blood. But as I say, we look forward to Guiltathon. It'll be interesting to see how many people come together for that, and what they actually get to discuss. I have been in touch with the fellow called Falcon, because he did a really good job of the logo and sign for Mammothon, and he's recycled it for Guiltathon. Simply with an email from Robert Herman, where he talks about the fact that hopefully the future will provide closure for the families involved in this case. It's interesting that he uses the word families, not simply the Holbachs. I wonder why Robert Herman used the term families will be provided with closure. In another email, he suggests that I check out a post on Reddit to suggest that there was more evidence that making a murderer framed the police than there is any evidence that that Steve was framed by the police. I would suggest that there's more evidence that that Teresa was abducted by aliens than there is evidence that Stephen Avery had anything to do with the disappearance of Teresa. Dan Kucharski's aliens have got a lot to answer for, haven't they? Anyway, I think that's really all I wanted to say for now. So yeah, we look forward to all that. Yes, there was one thing, yes. Eric Cozy did a little live video last night. It was scheduled for 2 o'clock. He then made it 3 o'clock. He then thought, because I would be fast asleep, he could get away with saying some rather interesting comments. At one time, he referred to America as being the greatest country in the world. Am I disagreeing with that? No, I would simply ask this simple question. How many couple 3 centuries do you think a country needs to be in existence to be classed as great? I would suggest that are there possibly greater countries out there that have had a lot more longevity? We're talking thousands of years, not hundreds of years. Just a wee observation there, you know. I had to nip out the bedroom for a couple of minutes at about 3:30 in the morning, and caught a bit of it and thought, yes, he thinks he can get away with saying anything when he thinks I'm not around. Anyway, we won't go on about him anymore. He was looking very smart in his new tie, also inspired by Mammothon. Me, I'm still gobsmacked at the success. As I say, it's in a way, I'm not surprised that one of the greatest and most sincerest forms of flattery is imitation, and that's what they've decided to go and do. Whether or not, of course, the state of Wisconsin is too happy with them raising the profile. All publicity is good publicity, even if we've got a lot of guilters talking about the case. The one thing I would say about guilt is I wonder if they're a little bit misguided. They seem to think that the whole outcome of this case rests with public opinion. I think we've seen that when it comes to judges and lawyers, they are not necessarily swayed by public opinion, although you know, Catherine Zellner uses her tweets and social media. One wonders how effective those are going to be with the judges that are actually going to look at the case, and you know, the evidence that has now come forward. I think obviously that this bones issue is going to be a huge one, and the state, as once again as Stacey pointed out, a lot of people have said, and I've said, well, I don't think the state would go to trial. But what kind of precedent would that set? They are tied into, if an evidentiary hearing and a retrial is ordered, they are tied to that. They have to. They have to keep hanging on to this ever-rising balloon. One wonders when the Holbachs are going to not just distance themselves, but actually get off this balloon and say, look, you're on your own on this one. Anyway, I've kept you long enough. Look forward to seeing you all again soon, particularly those that are going to be at the rally. Lots of things planned for then. Catch you again soon. Bye for now. And if you haven't done so already, please hit the various subscribe buttons. There, I said it. Okay, bye for now.